Imagine for a moment that everything you've ever criticized in another person was actually a mirror held up to your own consciousness. Every harsh word, every silent condemnation, every "they should know better" was really you struggling with something unresolved within yourself. What if Jesus wasn't giving us a moral rule when he said, "Judge not"? What if he was revealing the secret to inner freedom? My friends, we come together today not to add another burden to your shoulders, but to lift one off, a burden so heavy, so exhausting that most of us don't even realize we're carrying it. It's the burden of judgment. When Jesus spoke those transformative words, "Judge not," he wasn't delivering a commandment in the traditional sense. He was revealing a spiritual principle, a law of consciousness as exact as any law of physics. He was showing us the pathway to our own liberation, the nature of judgment. What is judgment really? It's the human mind believing it has the wisdom to evaluate, condemn, or approve of another's spiritual journey. It's the ego presuming to know what God alone can know. Every time we judge another person, we're essentially saying, "I know better than the divine intelligence that created this being." But here's the mystical truth that sets us free. When you judge another, you're not really seeing them at all. You're seeing your own state of consciousness projected outward, the critical thought you have about your neighbor. That's your consciousness speaking about itself. The condemnation you feel towards someone's choices, that's revealing what's unreconciled within you. This is why Jesus connected judgment so directly to our own experience. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. This isn't punishment, it's spiritual law. The consciousness that condemns outside must experience condemnation within. The mind that criticizes others lives in a state of self-criticism. The illusion of separation. We judge because we believe in separation. We see ourselves as distinct separate entities with the right and ability to evaluate other separate entities. But this is the grand illusion. In spiritual reality, there is only one life, one consciousness, one divine presence expressing itself infinitely. When you understand this, really understand it in your innermost being, judgment becomes impossible. How can the ocean judge one of its waves? How can the sun condemn one of its rays? You are that inseparable from every being you encounter, the practice of spiritual discernment. Now some will say, but surely we must discern right from wrong. We must have standards. Yes, but discernment and judgment are entirely different faculties. Discernment is wisdom. Judgment is condemnation. Discernment says this action brings harmony. That one brings discord. Judgment says this person is wrong, bad, or less than. Jesus himself demonstrated this perfectly. He discerned the consciousness of those he met. He saw through human appearances to spiritual reality. But he never condemned the person. "Neither do I condemn thee," he told the woman caught in adultery. He was demonstrating a consciousness so elevated that it could witness human failings without judging the individual. Your divine assignment. Here's your spiritual assignment. And it's the most liberating work you'll ever do. Begin to catch yourself in the act of judgment, not to condemn yourself for judging, that would just be more judgment, but simply to notice, there's a judgment. And in that moment of awareness, ask yourself, what is this judgment revealing about my own consciousness? When you find yourself critical of someone's materialism, ask yourself where you are still attached to material things or afraid of not having enough. When you judge someone's anger, inquire into your own unexpressed anger. This isn't psychotherapy. This is spiritual alchemy. You're transmuting the lead of judgment into the gold of self-awareness, living in the sacred now. As you practice this release from judgment, something miraculous happens. You begin to live in what I call the sacred now, a state of consciousness where you meet each person fresh without the overlay of past conditioning, without the projection of your opinions and beliefs. In this state, you can actually see people, not your idea of them, not your story about them, but their true spiritual nature. This is seeing through the Christ consciousness, and it changes everything. Where you once saw a difficult person, you now see a divine being having a human experience. Where you once saw failure, you now see a soul learning and growing. The freedom that awaits. My dear friends, when you truly stop judging others, you'll discover something wonderful. You've stopped judging yourself. The inner critic falls silent. The constant measuring and evaluating ceases. In its place comes a peace that truly does pass understanding. This is the promise Jesus held out to us, not as a distant reward, but as a present reality available the moment we shift our consciousness. When we stand before another human being and pass judgment upon them, we believe we are seeing them clearly, objectively, as they truly are. We think our criticism is accurate. Our assessment is fair. Our condemnation is justified. But this is one of the great illusions of human consciousness. In truth, when you judge another person, you are not seeing them at all. You are seeing yourself. Every judgment you make is a mirror held up to your own consciousness. The faults you so readily identify in others are the very qualities that live often unexamined within your own mind. The behaviors that trigger your harshest criticism are frequently the shadows you refuse to acknowledge in yourself. When you declare someone else to be arrogant, dishonest, or selfish, you are confessing what occupies your own mental and emotional landscape. This is not a matter of psychology or personal opinion. This is spiritual law. Consciousness cannot perceive what it does not contain. You cannot recognize a quality in another unless that quality exists somewhere within your own awareness. The thief sees theft everywhere. The liar suspects everyone of lying. The jealous person imagines jealousy in every relationship they observe. Consider how this operates in your daily life. You meet someone and within moments you have catalogued their flaws, their weaknesses, their failures. You have judged their appearance, their manner of speaking, their choices, their character, and you feel certain that your assessment is objective, that you are simply seeing reality as it is. But what you are actually doing is projecting the contents of your own consciousness onto them. You are using them as a screen upon which to display your own fears, insecurities, and unresolved conflicts. The tragedy is that the person you judge may walk away completely unaffected by your silent condemnation, while you must carry the weight of that judgment indefinitely. It becomes part of your mental atmosphere, your emotional climate, the very air you breathe. You have imprisoned yourself with your own thoughts, built walls with your own criticisms, created separation with your own condemnations. The mirror of judgment always reflects back upon the one who holds it, and what it shows us is not the other person's reality, but our own consciousness staring back at us. The greatest spiritual truth that Jesus demonstrated throughout his ministry was this: he saw divinity where others saw only humanity. He perceived the Christ presence where others perceived only sinners, tax collectors, prostitutes, and outcasts. This was not naive optimism or willful blindness to human error. This was spiritual vision, the ability to look beyond the temporary manifestation of human behavior to the eternal reality of divine being that exists in every soul. When we operate from ordinary human consciousness, we see only appearances. We see the mistakes people make, the limitations they exhibit, the darkness they seem to carry. We become fixated on their past actions, their current struggles, their apparent failures. And in seeing only this surface reality, we miss the profound truth that lies beneath. Every person, regardless of their behavior or circumstances, is an expression of the infinite divine consciousness. The Christ dwells within them just as surely as it dwells within the saint. This is perhaps the most challenging aspect of spiritual awakening, learning to see past the human drama to the divine reality. It requires a complete transformation of perception. You must train yourself to look at the alcoholic and see the Christ temporarily obscured by addiction. You must look at the angry person and recognize the divine presence momentarily clouded by pain. You must look at the one who has harmed you and acknowledge the God-self that exists beneath their unconscious behavior. This doesn't mean you condone harmful actions or pretend that destructive behavior is acceptable. It means you develop the capacity to hold two truths simultaneously. Yes, this person is acting from unconsciousness, and yes, the divine presence still resides within them. Yes, their behavior may be unacceptable, and yes, their essential nature remains untouched by their actions. Yes, they may need correction or consequences, and yes, they are still worthy of recognition as spiritual beings. When you develop this Christ vision, something extraordinary happens. You stop reacting to people from fear, anger, or superiority. You begin responding from a deeper place of understanding and compassion. You can Still maintain boundaries, still protect yourself, still speak truth to error. But you do so without that poisonous energy of condemnation that judgment always carries. You see the person as they truly are in spiritual reality, even while acknowledging where they currently stand in human experience. The human mind is constantly busy with the exhausting work of evaluation. From morning until night, we assess, criticize, approve, and condemn. We judge the driver who cuts us off, the coworker who speaks too loudly, the politician whose views differ from ours, the family member who disappoints us. We carry these judgments like heavy stones in an invisible bag, accumulating more weight with each passing hour, each passing day, each passing year. What we fail to recognize is that every judgment we hold is a chain that binds us. Every criticism we maintain is a lock on our own prison cell. We think we are merely observing reality, expressing valid opinions, or protecting ourselves from harm. But in truth, we are creating our own captivity. The mind that constantly judges is never at peace. It cannot rest. It cannot be still. It is forever scanning, evaluating, finding fault, and building cases against the world and everyone in it. True spiritual freedom begins the moment you release your need to judge, not because someone has commanded you to stop, not because it's the morally correct thing to do, but because you finally recognize that judgment serves no purpose except to keep you imprisoned in a state of separation and conflict. When you let go of the compulsion to evaluate everyone and everything around you, a space opens within your consciousness, a vast, peaceful space where love can enter, where understanding can flourish, where compassion can flow freely. This liberation doesn't happen through force or willpower. You cannot judge yourself into not judging. The freedom comes through recognition, through seeing clearly that the judging mind is the suffering mind. Every time you release a judgment, you feel lighter. Every time you choose not to condemn, you breathe more easily. Every time you look at another human being without mentally cataloging their faults, you experience a moment of genuine peace. And here is the beautiful paradox. The less you judge others, the less you judge yourself. The compassion you extend outward inevitably flows inward. The mercy you offer to another becomes the mercy you receive. The freedom you grant to others by releasing your judgments of them becomes your own freedom. You discover that you were never really judging them at all. You were judging life itself, and in doing so, judging your own existence. When judgment falls away, what remains is the natural state of your being, open, free, at peace, and capable of genuine love. At the deepest level of reality, there is no separation between you and any other living being. This is not poetry or metaphor. This is the fundamental truth of existence. We are all waves in the same ocean, rays of the same sun, expressions of the same infinite consciousness. What appears as separate individuals, each with distinct personalities, histories, and destinies, is really the divine presence manifesting in countless forms. When you truly grasp this truth, judgment becomes impossible. For how can you condemn another without condemning yourself? Yet judgment thrives on the illusion of separation. It requires us to believe that we are fundamentally different from those we judge, that we are over here and they are over there, that we are good and they are bad, that we are enlightened and they are ignorant, that we are worthy and they are not. Every judgment we make reinforces this false sense of division. It builds invisible walls between ourselves and others, creating a world of isolation where everyone stands alone, separate, competing for worth and value. This separation is perhaps the greatest source of human suffering. When you judge another, you cut yourself off from the flow of divine love that seeks to move through you. You cannot simultaneously condemn someone and remain connected to the universal consciousness that embraces all. You cannot hold yourself apart in superiority and experience the joy of unity. You cannot build walls of judgment and expect to feel the freedom of boundless connection. The spiritual journey is really a journey from separation back to unity, from the illusion of division back to the recognition of oneness. Every time you judge another person, you take a step backward into isolation. Every time you release judgment and recognize the divine presence in another, you take a step forward into the truth of your being. You remember that their struggles are your struggles. Their pain is your pain. Their awakening is your awakening. You are not separate observers of each other's lives. You are participants in the same eternal dance of consciousness discovering itself. When this recognition deepens in you, compassion arises naturally, not as something you must force yourself to feel, but as the inevitable response. Seeing truly. How can you be harsh with another when you recognize they are you in a different form? How can you condemn when you understand that their unconsciousness is the same unconsciousness that has at times clouded your own awareness? The illusion of separation dissolves, and what remains is the simple, profound truth we are one. The judgments we carry are rarely about the present moment. They are accumulated residue from the past old grievances, remembered slights, catalogued failures, and stored disappointments. When you judge someone today, you are almost never seeing them as they actually are in this moment. You are seeing them through the lens of yesterday, last week, last year, or even decades ago. You are relating to a memory, not to a living, breathing, evolving human being who stands before you now. This is one of the most tragic aspects of judgment. It freezes people in time. It takes someone's worst moment and declares it to be their eternal identity. It takes a mistake they made years ago and insists that this mistake defines who they are today. The person may have grown, changed, learned, and transformed, but your judgment refuses to acknowledge this possibility. You hold them captive to their past, and in doing so, you hold yourself captive as well, unable to experience the freshness and possibility of the present moment. True spiritual awakening requires that we meet each person fresh, as if for the first time, without the heavy baggage of previous assessments. This doesn't mean we forget everything or ignore patterns of behavior. It means we remain open to the possibility that this moment is new, that consciousness is always evolving, that transformation is always possible. When you approach someone without dragging along your accumulated judgments, you create space for a genuine encounter. You allow them to be who they are now, not who they were then. Living in the now means releasing the need to maintain your catalogue of other people's faults. It means letting go of the stories you've constructed about who they are and what they're capable of. It means meeting this moment with open eyes and an open heart, willing to be surprised, willing to be wrong about your previous conclusions, willing to see something you've never seen before. This is where freedom and judgment cannot coexist. Judgment keeps you locked in the past, endlessly reviewing and reinforcing old conclusions. Present moment awareness dissolves judgment naturally because you're too busy experiencing what is to worry about what was. When you're fully present, you discover that the person before you is as new as this breath, as fresh as this moment, as full of possibility as the unfolding now. The past loses its grip, judgment falls away, and you find yourself capable of relating to others with a clarity and compassion you never thought possible. My dear friends, we have journeyed together through one of the most transformative teachings ever given to humanity. We have explored how judgment imprisons us, how the Christ presence lives in all beings, how freedom comes through releasing our need to condemn, how separation is illusion, and how the present moment dissolves the chains of past assessments. But now you must ask yourself, what will you do with this understanding? Will these words remain mere concepts, pleasant ideas to consider and then forget? Or will you allow them to penetrate your consciousness so deeply that they transform the way you see every person you encounter? The teaching is simple, but the practice requires vigilance. It requires awareness. It requires a willingness to catch yourself in the very moment judgment arises and choose differently. You will not become perfect at this overnight. You will stumble, you will judge, you will forget. But each time you remember, each time you choose to see the Christ instead of the error, each time you release condemnation and embrace recognition of divine presence, you take one more step into freedom. Remember this, the world does not need your judgment. It has plenty of that already. What the world desperately needs is your vision, your ability to see past appearances to reality, to recognize the divine spark even in the darkest places, to offer the gift of non-damnation that creates space for transformation. When you stop judging others, you don't become passive or weak. You become powerful with the power of love. You become clear with the clarity of truth. You become free with the freedom that only comes from releasing the need to evaluate, condemn, and separate yourself from your fellow human beings. So I leave you with this. Begin today, begin now. Begin with the very next person you encounter. Look at them not with the eyes of judgment, but with the vision of Christ. See them not as their mistakes, but as their divine essence. Meet them not with your accumulated opinions, but with the freshness of present moment awareness. And as you do this, as you practice this daily, hourly, moment by moment, you will discover that you are not just changing how you see others. You are transforming your entire consciousness. You are awakening to who you truly are. You are living the teaching that Jesus gave us. Judge not. This is your path. This is your calling. This is your freedom. Go now in peace and see with new,